Okay, so we're going to tackle, oops, my hair. We're going to tackle my hair. Okay, we're going to tackle today a new unit in fundamentals of therapeutic massage, and it's called Beyond the Basics. So they're inherent in the first chapter, Complementary Bodywork methods, is the idea of separating out interventions from the whole process of massage therapy. And so because of that, some of these have been developed into a system in and of themselves, and that's why they're in this chapter. This is an ongoing frustration for me because each of these systems that are really just an adaptation of massage to target a particular physiological function, which I like to have you think of as mimic normal, are not unique, and they do absolutely belong within the scope of practice of massage therapy. However, when they are pulled out like this and take on a life of their own, let's consider fluid movement like lymphatic drain. Where's the line that you draw between mimic normal and use the method to treat non-complicated dysfunction, like generalized swelling of the legs related to sitting for a little while in the car and eating a bunch of potato chips with the salt on them, from pathologically based lymphedema that has inherent with it a lot of complications. Does there need to be a separate discipline to treat the level of severity that you might find with some sort of real breakdown in normal function? Same with connective tissue approaches to address scar tissue, to increase the pliability in the area and potentially improve function. Does that need to be separated out? Myofascial release has been separated out as its own discipline, and then becomes more narrow in its approach when we can easily assess for that when we are doing a general massage, and then we can make an adaptation in such a way to more specifically target the connective tissue, let's say density or stiffness or binding sensation in the context of a massage. So trigger points are another area. So that's typically that's an inhibitory pressure. There are some variations on that that we'll talk about when we actually get into that. But it's a pressure down into the area, and then you can add elements to that, not like moving it around or have them moving it. And then these things separate themselves into methodology, and you get ideas like pin and stretch, or active release technique, or I mentioned myofascial release, or lymphatic drain, or and the list goes on. And this happens with tools too, like cupping, or vacuum therapy, or instrument assisted methods, which is typically using a type of a scraping tool. But it could maybe be an electrical device like a thumper, or they talk about theraguns right now. And then where does something like hydrotherapy fit into that? Now, hydrotherapy is water and thermal therapy. That is a discipline in and of itself. It can be uniquely practiced, but and it isn't very typically done that way. It's usually provided in conjunction with other manual type applications. And so you see it in athletic training. You see it a lot as various applications in the wellness and spa industry. It's very powerful. There's a lot there with hydrotherapy. And so how do we integrate that into massage when it really can be its own thing? So that is the struggle here with this next step in your learning. Up until this point, we have really focused on the elements of massage and massage therapy. And as we look to expand on this idea of intervention to create a change, to maybe work towards a specialization, that can be population-based or method-based. There is a lot of confusion in this particular area. So what I'm going to do as we go through the various videos that address these topics, I want you to continue to think about now, how is this also already part of massage therapy with scope, within scope, and then how come this is practiced separately or within that narrow focus. Now, there's another category that's going to show up in this chapter, and that is your cultural approaches. And you think of traditional Chinese medicine as an example. Now, these are full health systems in and of themselves. They encompass a broad spectrum of application. And the same thing has happened to them. They've pulled out, people have pulled out parts of this and then treated it out of context of the whole philosophy. So I think of acupressure, or working on a mat like you would see in shiatsu or Thai, or some of these others approaches that are out there. When once you remove, it's like trying to take a raisin out of an oatmeal cookie. Once you do that, it's not the same. The cookie is not the same, and the raisin doesn't have the same effect either. So Just kind of keep that little background in mind as we take a look at this chapter that we're going to pursue specifically, and the unit that we are now in. So I'm going to share my screen. And that should take us to our textbook. So the unit is called Beyond the Basics. And the chapters that are inclusive in here are the one I was speaking to, Complementary Bodywork Systems. And then we also then start to take a look at some specialization in here. Career pathways, adaptive massage. This is more to a specific population, like, or a specific environment, like working in a hospital, or with a particular type of client. Maybe you want to work with people that have anxiety. That's what we're talking about here. The massage is the massage is the massage. Same here. The massage does not change. We still assess the client, work with their outcome goals, choose the type of approach. Is it palliative? Is it restorative? We screen for contraindications. We have to make sure we understand what other interventions or treatments might be being used, especially in this adaptive massage category. But we still glide, we still knead, we still hold. We just adapt it. We just alter it so that we get the best benefit with the least potential for harm. And then chapter 15 here is about wellness and self-care in general, stress management in particular, and I'll look at generalized information about exercise and diet, and body-mind interventions. Not that we would necessarily do these. We might not, maybe or maybe not, lead somebody through a meditation, for example, but we certainly know the value of that when we expand our knowledge here in this chapter, and we can refer. And then this very important chapter here with 20 case studies that pull everything together. So here we go with this first chapter, chapter 12. And this first section, Complementary Bodywork Systems, is the same as my intro to this video, is trying to make sense of this convoluted kind of collection of methodology that's way more the same than different, and what has happened to it is with some separate language slapped on it, or whatever. So and then we're going to get into the hydrotherapy, which I've also mentioned. So this would be considered an adjunct in addition to, and again, hydrotherapy is in our scopes of practice in most places. It certainly is in Michigan. And then, an expansion on the hot, cold, stone thing. And then we get into the essential oil aromatherapy. All of these are about safety first. And then this idea of implement-assisted massage. Then this adaptive, or this adjunct on KT taping or kinesiology taping. All right, so these are additional add-on of the one that I think personally is most helpful and has the richest background in application, as well as over the history of massage, is hydrotherapy. The rest of these, you got to be careful. So that's why we have to take a look at those, so that if you decide you want to use them, and some of them are helpful, you got to learn how to be careful with it. And then we get into these methodologies here that are really just taking what we already do with massage therapy and zeroing in on a more particular physiological function. And you cannot just encourage fluid movement, or you cannot just encourage the sliding of connective tissue. You cannot separate these out, but you can by changing your modifiers and the method that you use to apply the mechanical force. So you can do you can do a glide with less lubricant that's going to increase the drag. You can do that, and you can use a method that has more of a lifting, kneading component for encouraging some separation in the connective tissue. But the methods are not really that unique. It's just the intention for how we are using them. And then we get down into the more cultural-based approaches. Certainly not to make you an expert in this, but to create respect for these systems that stand alone, have a body of knowledge in and of themselves, should have a broad, encompassing educational platform for it. And some of them even have their own certification, licensing procedures. So you will find that in the Asian bodywork methods, for example. And reflexology, too, has its own credentialing. So that's the overview of what we're going to try to take a look at. So here are your objectives and your key terms. And then this is that whole conundrum here of what you sense me and hear me stumbling over, because it creates a lot of confusion. And I wish that there was a better way to reconcile this, but a lot of this terminology has worked its way into the general public, and it is kind of embedded. And so what are we going to, we have to understand how that has occurred, but we also have to back up and go, okay, now how are these things more similar than different? So this is the way that the text, this chapter in particular, has been organized. And wanting to establish within here the similarities and to outline a few of the differences that might occur, but many, many more similarities. So what happens then when we get into this situation is we start naming things to separate them. So we start saying that we have therapeutic massage and relaxing massage and medical massage, and it just keeps going on and on, where therapeutic massage is, there's an intention for support, relaxing massage, I don't know what anybody means by that, because that is an outcome. And same with medical massage. That's a very confusing term. That certainly came to light at the beginning of the 2020 pandemic, when there was discussion about what's essential and non-essential and all that kind of stuff. And people thought, well, we'll bring forth this term medical that's been bounced around for years to try to make it seem more essential. So do spend time reading through this and thinking through this segment. And maybe you'll be one of the ones in the future that helps sort this out, so that we are all respectful of each other, and we learn to work together, and we identify the similarities, and stop breaking the cookie apart. You know, we can make the cookie be unique in a way, but it's still a cookie. So, all right. So this section in hydrotherapy is fleshed out and explained very well. And the problem with hydrotherapy in the generalized massage therapy community is that the equipment or the delivery of the temperature changes and that sort of thing through the use of water, because there's other ways to deliver heat and cold, can be problematic. The equipment, you know, there's sanitation and safety and all that goes with the equipment. And your bigger spas often will have an expanded and more inclusive hydrotherapy department or system that you can work with. Sports medicine uses hydrotherapy a lot, as does physical therapy in some situations. So we're thinking about water, the characteristics of water, and what water can do it with its various state changes from hot to cold and liquid and solid and vapor. That's what's involved here. And the safety considerations are that you don't want to burn somebody, which is a big problem with the idea of hot stones or laying a hot thing, right, on somebody and letting it just sit there. So we have to stop and consider that. So this chapter in and of itself is pretty self-explanatory. I think hydrotherapy applications are a great thing to send people home as self-care. You know, because most everybody's got a tub or a shower, or they can warm up a hot pack or something. And then we, in most situations, need to look at what can we integrate into the generalized massage practice that doesn't necessarily have specific equipment, and how can we do that so that it adds value to the massage. So I'm certainly not going to take the time here on any of these tables to go through. I'm going to expect that you're going to do that. And the same with any of the other specific procedures in here. uh, we'll practice this to a certain extent in the classroom, but these are skill sets that you can also develop on your own, and just by following the protocols in place. So pay attention when you're doing this to stop and look at all your boxes. And basically what's happening here is the temperature change, if there's hot or cold, is causing it's a stimulation that's causing the body to adapt. If you're putting cold on it, it's causing it to warm up. If you put heat on it, it's causing it to cool down, to normalize, to bring it back to a homeostatic level. In addition to that, these can act, the temperatures can act as a counter irritant. So you can put heat on something and it'll reduce the sensation of discomfort. Now, cold is really good for that. It's a stronger signal to the body, and you get your primary effect of some vasoconstriction, but you also get a slowing down of nerve transmission in that isolated area, which is going to help with like muscle spasms or something. And so I'm not real sure that cold applications do a lot with, so I'm sitting in front of a window here and it's fall. So I'm not exactly sure about the anti-inflammatory aspect of that. I don't know that it penetrates deep enough for that to actually occur and interfere with healing in the acute phase, but I do know that it's a really good pain reliever, and you just got to make sure that you don't frostbite the skin with it. So do stop and read through what these various effects are, and there's primary and secondary effects. And then we have a list of some supplies here that you can gather. Many of these are available right at home for you. Sometimes a piece of equipment that massage therapists want to get for their massage therapy area is a towel warmer or a towel caddy. You can use those to hold dry towels and warm them up, or wet towels and warm them up. There's a type of ceramic based, what's called a synergy stone. It's to get away from the gimmicky level or gimmicky nature of hot stone massage or cold stone massage or all that stuff that goes on with that. There are some that have been made that can be warmed in the microwave oven or put in the freezer so they can function either hot or cold. In the massage therapy arena, we're probably not going to use immersion or baths. We might do a foot bath, but this information here can certainly be used to suggest some self-care. Now, a foot bath, we got one up here in this picture. There's a couple of little things that are nice about that. People relax best when their feet are warm. So you want to keep their feet warm, and you can start them out in a warm bath, and then you can wrap them in a warm towel. This also, feet can get sweaty. They're contained in socks and shoes, and they can have an odor as well. And so by starting the massage with a warm foot bath or a warm foot scrub, by using a hot, wet towel, which also can serve to warm up the therapist's hands, can help mitigate some of that sense of distress over working with somebody's feet. So there's some suggestions to you. Now you can put stuff in the water, but be careful now, because as soon as you do that, you've got to be aware of any kind of adverse effect or allergic reaction. So I'm not a fan of putting too much stuff in the water. Epsom salts, potentially, it creates an additional buoyancy. You may absorb some of the magnesium in there. Magnesium calms the nervous system a little bit. And so, it's nice. It's really nice to have these products on us, and it feels good to have them spread on us. But we have to stop and think about how much research is there showing that there is a verifiable therapeutic effect from these various add-ons or additions to the water. Now, a whirlpool or something with jets, that actually applies a mechanical force. So those might, something that agitates the water or directs the water at a particular area, that is different. That is something that is doing similar things to what massage does by applying a mechanical force into the tissue. And if you're in full immersion with water, you get a buoyancy to that, which it can be real relieving. I was in a friend's pool, and it's a saltwater pool, and it was, you feel much lighter. There's the water itself, the density of the water carries you. And I remember getting up, I was in there a while, and I remember getting up out of that, and as I lifted myself up out of the water, I felt like 1,000 pounds. And that heavy sensation after being in that buoyancy was really striking. Being in the buoyancy of the water, the hydrostatic pressure, the potential for some sort of jets or agitation to create a mechanical force or increased sensation, that's a really nice, relaxing therapeutic effect. Just know in a commercial world, you would have to have lots of, the health department has to inspect, and you have to really maintain sanitation for these things like a whirlpool. So here's some more applications around the cold applications. And then we talk about saunas and steam baths. So you can have a dry sauna and a wet sauna. The dry sauna, it's not hydrotherapy. There's no water aspect to it. It's a thermal therapy specifically. Those are they're expensive, but they're a reasonable enough cost that if you wanted to install something like that in your therapeutic environment, that might be worth it. And then the steam bath or the steam sauna does have the hydrotherapy component to it. Now we get into some areas that we can incorporate into the massage, like compresses and packs, whether they're hot or cold. And these pictures give you some ideas on how to use some of that. This hot sheet pack can go along with something else called contrast hydrotherapy. And these are hydrotherapy specific treatment protocols. And so you would not necessarily do this in conjunction with massage like you might put a pack on somebody. So, but it is within scope. And so you may want to explore this as an ongoing education, maybe even develop a specialization in these and the therapeutic advantage of these as an additional offering that you can have. I would caution you against doing a massage at the same time you did something like this. This is really causing a lot of adaptive demand on the body. So here, as you'll find in all of these discussions, we have a little bit of some ideas about how you can incorporate hydrotherapy right into a massage session. So there you go. Now this expands, this hot and cold stone. You can use water to deliver the temperature to warm these implements up. There's nothing magical about a stone. There is a body of knowledge around the effects of crystalline structures and the potential effects they have on the body. And I think I discussed that a little bit more later on. But as we get into this, we're really talking more about thermal therapy or temperature. This box is going to talk about the progression and the conundrum related around a type of first aid, thermal / hydrotherapy first aid that has other elements like compression and rest and stuff to it. So there's ice and rice and price and police and meat. So do stop and read this. And these, you might want to put these each into a Google search and expand more on what's going on with that. So here's the discussion on hot and cold stones. And I am not a gimmick person. I do, however, realize that people like a bit of difference from the norm in some of the massage applications. They like the idea of the relaxing music and a heated table and these types of things. And so there's something about stones and crystals and things like that that has a cultural lineage to it that seems to make us feel like we're more connected with the elements of our world. And so, you know, as much as I go, now don't get gimmicky, I also realize that this is an element to consider as well. At the same time, you do not want to get caught up in pseudoscience around all of this. A stone is a medium for delivering hot or cold, and it releases it slowly. So that's basically what we've got here. And it becomes a tool or an implement when you use it to massage with. The big thing you got to be careful here is that you do not burn people, or in a much more rare instance, you don't cause tissue damage with excessive cold. So I go through here, healing property of minerals. I go through here and I talk about theories that might be an underpinning of this historical cultural experience around having minerals in crystalline form, which is a piezo material, being part of a healing experience. More pragmatically, they can be used as an implement. So we've got gliding or pressure or compression. Then we got thermal therapy that I've already talked about. And I get concerned with any implement, anything that we use instead of our hands and forearms or feet and leg, because we have to, an implement, you have to hold on to it. And when you hold on to it, there's a grasp that goes with it. And we have to be careful we don't burn ourselves. We have to be careful that we don't disengage from the sensation that the person's feeling, because we got the tool between us and their body. So that's what I'm talking about here. And then the idea of justifying the use of stones with massage. And I have explained that. And in the spa that our family owns, we do use some of the ceramic tools, the synergy type stone. And I think that's a good product. I'm not very big into products, but I think that that is a good product. And we'll show you those in the classroom. So we go through this, and then we talk about what kind of stones you would buy. And you can actually get fake stones that stay warm. They got a little battery in them and all that. So this is starting to evolve or devolve into the idea that it's the weight, it's the heaviness with the heat or the cold that is pleasing. So here are your safety, 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 safety first. Never put a stone on skin, regardless of the temperature, and let it just sit there. Potentially cold, a cool stone or a cold stone is not going to cause frostbite. But the slow adaptation to heat can absolutely cause burns. So always put it over top of a towel. You can use a stone to massage with, and that will, you know, as long as it's moving, you have a reduced potential for burns. So these pictures show other, along with stones, other types of ways to deliver temperature. one of my favorites is this. This is just a tube sock filled with rice. You put one sock inside another, and then you fill the internal one with rice and tie it off. And then the external sock you tie off, and then you can take that one off to launder. The stones have to be sanitized in an alcohol or bleach or approved disinfecting sanitizing product. And so here, these are cold stones that are kind of between the toes. That feels kind of good. And there's value in feels good. So if the stone is placed over the sheet, it's going to be a warm stone. If it's placed on the skin, it might be a cool stone. I like the rice-filled bags better because they don't fall off, but they still have mass and weight to them. You just got to make sure that the rice or other seed product or the little ceramic beads or whatever that is in there, that it is over top of you're placing them over top of a sanitary covering, and that you can wash it. So you can always put these in a pillowcase or something. Okay. That is going to complete the hydrotherapy thermal therapy segment. And so I'm going to stop the video here. When we come back, the next one will be about essential oils and the concerns that we have with that. So, all righty. I do encourage you to really think about therapeutic implementation of a variety of hydrotherapy and thermal therapy elements in your practice. And think about ways that you can do that safely and that you can do it effectively and efficiently. Okay, let's get out of here.